You should have received an email earlier today about what happens in case of inclement weather. Most of the time, since it's Tuesday, Thursday, I'm thinking whatever's going to happen this weekend shouldn't be a pain in the ass to us, but you never know. So it was just, I said, oh, things may go sideways in terms of weather this weekend. I'll send it to everybody. So you got a copy of what normally happens. You'd get a Zoom link and an email from me, and we'd go just like we were here. I wouldn't be in front of you. I'd be at home with the camera and the ability to share everything there. Second, I recommend thoroughly that you use this link to Dr. Burns' site and look through the Module 1 lectures as well as the notes I post. On our Canvas page, you'll see not just what I wrote physically under the camera was posted, but all of my pre-written notes. So everything I'm working from, that way you have all of that to look at. And the examples that I put under here, that text file of options and click-through rates and all that, those are these files right here. We're going to use some more of these today. We'll port this data into Excel to use it. You can also see the practice quiz using Respondus Monitor and Lockdown Browser, the forum post, those dates, the time is before the start of class. So those things say the 29th. That's a week from today. It means they're due before class on Thursday. So please make sure you take that thing in stride. And then the assignments for this first module are the Tuesday following that. Please make sure you make note of the times they're due before class starts on that date. Meanwhile, I now have this idea of gathering data, cleaning it up, doing something with it to answer a question. So one of the things I want to do is do my data manipulation in Excel. We will also find lots of other pieces of software that are useful in this fashion. But most of the time, I need to take the raw pile of data I have and turn it into something useful. I need to make sure I have universally formatted data so I know that when you look at the file, and you look at the file, you see the same things, or if you contribute to the file and you contribute to the file, that the data you put in doesn't overlap. How do I remove redundancies and things like that? A lot of this happens to be built in to what we do in Excel. So let me start Lecture 3 doc with some data. Here, in the document file labeled Lecture 3 Examples on your Canvas page, I want you to pull this up. It's a Word doc. You can download it, hang on to it. You can open it directly in there. We're going to copy and paste from it. I'm going to take this first pile, this table right here, and I'm going to copy that into Excel. Just Control V, Control C, Control V. Highlight in the text file, dump it into Excel. Now, this is what happened, and this looks like crap. I got some information from store I'm working with, here's my products, here's what we sold this past month, here's how much we made. But those descriptors at the top are chopped off. How can I fix that so I can read them all? So up here between A and B, I can double click that and it'll open it up. I can also, if I don't want to do it one at a time, since they're all highlighted, I can go over to this block in the top ribbon that says Format. And if I click on the drop down there is an auto fit column width option that will auto fit the largest thing in each column set up. Yes, sir.
What is the file called again?
The file is called Lecture 3 Examples Document. You should probably take all of those and download them all because we're going to use them all. The Lecture 2 one was the one I did on Tuesday with the individual rows. If I go to the format and I auto fit column width, it does it to all of them at once. If you are using Office 365 online rather than a downloaded local copy, I've got Office 2019 on here, you may have these in slightly different places. But now I can ask, how do you want to lay this out? Is this a useful order to have this information in? This is a small set of data. I'm pretty sure I can glance through this and find whatever I need fairly quickly. But if this was a larger set of data, what might be a more useful way to lay this out? Just hang on to it for the moment. What might be a more useful way to try and look at this from a business perspective? Potentially, but with such a small amount of data at this point, I'm not sure what charts I would use. Let me hold on to that visual for a moment. Just within the table, if I want to organize this, I'm the owner of the store. What do I care about? Filthy capitalist that I am. So let's organize this by revenue. If I care about the money, let's sort it from the products that make me the most money to the products that make me the least money. How do I do that?
You could just go off of revenue.
Right, I've got revenue, so I want to sort revenue. Physically, how do I sort by revenue? Yes, ma'am. Click on which row? On C. So sort and filter is up here. Little funnel and an AZ in the upper right corner. If I just click sort there, sort largest to smallest, something interesting happens. It warns me. You've only told me to sort column C. There's other data outside what you've selected that won't be sorted. I would change which number went with which row. I wouldn't change anything in column A or column B. Okay, all of a sudden the $900 that goes with hoodies is now with t-shirts instead because those columns don't get sorted unless, instead of highlighting just column C, I have all of it. And it says you can expand the selection or you can continue with the current selection. If I click expand, leave that highlighted and click sort, then it puts everything together and does the whole three. Control Z, we see them the way they were, repeat the process, and they're resorted by revenue. Perhaps my ideal would be maybe to move the most product. So maybe I want to sort instead by column units sold, right? So if I were to say, have all of them highlighted and then hit sort, because I'm in C, it went with that, right? But what if I want to sort by something different? There's a custom sort option there, right? If I click on custom sort, it'll ask, what do you want to sort by? And now you'll notice in the upper right of this little pop-up, it says my list has headers, so it doesn't consider the top row to be part of the things I want to sort. And then I can change this to whatever I want. I could sort by product name alphabetically or reverse alphabetically. I could sort by units sold, default to smallest to largest. I could change that, and then it rearranges. Let's pull our next data file. Again, this is a small list. So what I'm doing is fairly simplistic, but imagine I do this same application to a list of, I don't know, courses open to freshmen. We'll see that in a minute. Maybe I don't care about the order in which stuff is displayed in, but I have a minimum criteria. I want to know, does anyone in this list have fewer than 15 tasks completed in a week? Now, this list is small enough I can look at that and go, no. But assume for the moment, I am looking at a company of several hundred people. How could I get this list to only show me people whose total number of tasks completed is below 15? I could sort them, right? And if I sorted them, then I'd have the smallest number at the top or at the bottom, and I'd be able to find out where that was and just go up the line until I get to cutoff. I'd rather make them do it for me. Technology is smarter than that. Same button, sort and filter. Let's go to the filters. If you click on filter, it doesn't look like anything changed. What's different? Drop downs. Each of those columns now has a little drop down arrow on it. And I can say, oh, I want to filter by tasks completed. How do I want to filter? Notice there's a sort option here as well, but I could say I want to filter by things that equal or do not equal or are greater than or equal to. Aha, I have all sorts of options here. I wanted to know if anyone was less than 15. So I'll click on less than, and then it'll ask me to put a number there. 15. Nobody. All of the columns automatically changed. So let me walk through that again. Clear filter. Turn off filters. Here we go. I highlight the table. I click on filter here. By the way, filter can be found in multiple places. This is just the one that's on the home ribbon. If you instead click on this data option in the top menu, that'll bring up an entire data ribbon. And you'll see sorting and filtering are now here. I can use this filter the same way. It just creates the drop downs. Is anybody working more than 40 hours a week? I need to pay overtime to people who work more than 40 hours a week. Click on hours worked. Choose greater than put in the number 40. Soon as I hit enter, I see Charlie worked more than 40 hours. Charlie's getting overtime. Again, it is not always the type of data I'm using. More often, this is much more common on very large data files. So, where is my other Excel file? Here it is. Nope, that's a gradebook. Here's my other data file. I got this in email last night. These are courses open to freshmen that have associated course fees. And I was asked to review the course fees that go with my courses. So, how do I find them? There are 1,500 courses here. I teach math, data. That's it. So really all I need to do is look at those courses. So I'm going to go back up here, highlight all of these rows, go to the bottom, and click filter. Back up at the top there are my drop downs. I can filter by anything I want. I'm going to filter by prefix, and I am going to deselect everything except SMA, math. There are the math courses. There are the fees that go with the math courses. That's it. That's every math course at Seton Hill, whether they're open to freshmen or not, and which ones have associated fees. Rather than looking at 1,500 lines, I am now looking only at how many? There you go. A nice small number of courses to look at. I don't care what the file is. If I'm looking for particular things now, I'm also in charge of a couple other groups of classes. I should look at the data classes. I should look at the computer science classes. I should look at the cybersecurity classes so that I know what in the Department of Technology has a fee associated with it and what doesn't. I can filter all of those at the same time. I could add in my filter not just SMA, but also, let's say, computer science, SCS. Or, not and. SCS. Auto apply. There they are. They got added right up there at the top. Both sets. What criteria am I looking for? I can find it. If I want to get rid of the filter, I just click that and it goes away. Questions so far? I did this on purpose. Some of these examples I took directly from Dr. Burns's notes, and some I kind of added myself here. Let's get rid of the course fees file. We'll create a new set. Here is our next set of data labeled remove duplicates. I go back to that home to auto format so I can see everything. Without additional identification, I see things happen here more than once. John's, Smith's t-shirt that's in the first line is also in the third line. Maybe when we merged several files, things got reinserted. This is a pain in the neck. I only want unique records of my data. I don't want to go through manually and get rid of duplicate records. This should be able to compare line to line to line and automatically dump them out. Again, I'm going to go back to that data ribbon. And I notice, as I look along here, there's something in that ribbon that does exactly what I want it to. You see how there are two blue cells, white cell in the middle, and an X? Oh, those are the two highlighted cells are the same, get rid of them. It even says remove duplicates right on it. I've highlighted the entire thing. If I click remove duplicates, it'll ask me which column am I looking to duplicate in. I've got everything selected. So I'm looking for duplicates for the whole row. And then, poof, it tells me a duplicate value is found and removed. 4 unique values remain. If I had date and time stamps on any of this data, maybe John came back and bought another shirt, then I would be able to say, no, those are still unique, leave them there. But just from this set, this is important because merged databases and combined sources are an easy way to have repetition, have fallacious data, and have something look like it's happening far more often than it really is. Make sure you've got as many fields selected when you go to remove duplicates, because you really want to make sure you don't accidentally have something that did happen more than once at 2 different times. Cleaning your data is important. That file full of courses and fees was huge, right? When I got to the bottom, I couldn't see anything that was at the top where all the titles were. These titles here, if I start scrolling, they disappear. I don't particularly like that. I'd like to be able to continue to see these things. So if I want to keep those on the page as I move around, how can I do that? Here again, I will create a new file for us. I want to keep that top row up there. Do you guys do this in 110? Does anybody know how to keep that frozen in place, leave it right there? Again, for small data files, it's not all that important. I can see everything at once. Larger data files, it might be quite useful. If I want the top row to stay in place, I need to click under the top row. I need to be under the row I want frozen. If I want a column frozen, I need to be under or to the right of the column I want frozen as well. And then I need to go to the View tab. Because I'm trying to preserve something about the view, I click on this View option. I'm trying to keep stuff at the top and the right in place. Looky here. It's even got the highlighted top row and the highlighted right column, sorry, leftmost column. And it says freeze panes. If I click that, I can freeze the top row. And no matter what I do beneath it, the top row stays in place. I can freeze the first column, which means no matter how far to the right I go, the first column stays in place. I can do both. If I am here, I can click freeze pane, and then both row and column are frozen. Again, in small data files, that's not a big deal. Here's your gradebook. You'll notice it's blank. This is the gradebook for this course. All I have are names and a list of the forum posting with their grades on it. Nobody's done any of that I've graded yet, so there's nothing in here. If I scroll right, first column stays in place. If I scroll down, the top row stays in place. I froze the panes on this. This is a fairly large class for Seton Hill. I want to be able to see all of those things as once. As I go down, I want to be able to move through that. Questions? Grab the last data pile here. I want you to do a couple things. Please do this. Good luck. How many rows do you have after you've done this sort and filter? Sort by revenue in descending order. Custom sort. List has headers. I want to use revenue. Largest to smallest rather than the other way around. Descending order. And then filter to only show products with revenue over $500. Go back, filter, revenue. How do I get what I need? Aha. So right here in the choose, I got to make it greater than, and then put the 500 there. Yes? Enter. There we go. 2 products listed in descending order of revenue over 500. So when I do these sorts of sorts and filters, what do I learn? Let me get rid of this whole file. What do I learn from sorted and filtered data? Nothing. I'm just jerking you around for the hell of it. This is useless and I'm just playing around here. What can you learn from a sort? Well, shortcuts to find it, but what does the data tell me once I've found it? Yes, Having shortcuts to get the data is always helpful from sorting and filtering, but what information am I going to get from my pile of data? I could get the two ends, right? If I sort, I know what the high is, sort highest on top, sort lowest on top. I can pop back and forth from top to bottom of my list. I can look at the whole range, right? I do grades. So to me, I think of data like this and I say, oh, if I'm looking at a sorted and filtered idea, I get a range. Since most of the data I work with is grades, I'm going to give a test in calculus in a couple of weeks. The calculus student's going to take the test, and I'm going to go, all right, what were the grades? How did they do? What's my lowest grade? What's my highest grade? If I sort them, I can then look at the distribution of those grades. And we can think of a distribution as sort of the pattern being made by all of those grades. I can look at trends. Hey, where were most of the grades? Are most of the grades around 80? Are most of the grades around 40? Sure as hell hope not. How far is that spread? Is this important, useful information? For me, absolutely. If the exam grades are clustered around 30, I F up. If the exam grades are clustered around 95, I F'd up. That exam was way too easy. The other exam was way too hard. What did I do differently? Or did I just have an exceptional group of students in the calc class and they blew me out of the water? Who are the top performers? Who are the bottom performers? Where should I spend my time helping people? Who should I make sure? You need to come see me in office hours. You should go to the tutoring center. You should be a tutor next year. Let's talk about what the right thing to do is. All of these pieces get combined just from sorting. Now let's take that same idea from grades and put that in a business context. I had products, hoodies and caps and shirts and shoes and all these other things I could sell. If I sort by revenue generated, what's bringing in the most money to me? Where am I doing the most business? What's the bottom of the barrel? What's selling really badly? Should I keep carrying that? I guarantee you that there is a back stock of slides in the bookstore. And I'm pretty sure very few of you wore them today. Should we keep them on stock? We're not going to sell very many of them in January, do you think? But I know I'll sell them in May. I know I'll sell them in August. I should probably hang on to the stock. If I filter, I can filter out low sellers by defining what my definition of low is in terms of product number or dollar value or some combination of both. Filtering allows me a shortcut because it only shows me exactly what I've asked for. I can filter to get an exact match. I want things that sold exactly $500. I could be very, very disappointed. Maybe nothing sold exactly $500. Now, this is the problem. The computer is dumb. It will do exactly what you tell it to do. Means I have to be smarter than the piece of machinery. A very, very, very long time ago, when I was in grade school, computers were a new thing. Robotics was a new idea. And my teacher came to class with a basket of groceries. Peanut butter, jelly, bread, silverware, and paper plates. He set it all out on the table. He stood at the end of the table and he said, I am a computer. You want a peanut butter sandwich. Tell me what to do. The first student he pointed at said, you take the peanut butter and you put it on the bread. So he walks over, picks up a jar of peanut butter, drops it on all his bread, because I can't eat that. Next. It took 12 people before we had a sandwich we could actually pick up, hold, and eat. You have to be much smarter than the technology is to get the question right. And the steps of instructions you want to make to get the information to answer that question can be done automatically. But you need to get the question. We've done sorting. We can do multiple column sorting. I can combine sorts and filters. I can get, if I go back and I look at my filter again. Oh, I got rid of the Excel sheet. Doesn't help if I don't have data to work in. Here's the course fees data again. Let's make it big so it's readable. And if I again go through and sort and filter, one of the options I can filter by is top 10. That's by color. And if I do a filter by number, I can get that top 10, top 5, top whatever. You'll notice the list shows me all of those numbers available to me. I could scan it manually. I don't think that's worthwhile. Questions? The list of examples for section 4, dated, called L4 examples, have some options for you to go through and try some of those there. But if I'm working in Excel, let's get rid of that data again. I often want Excel to do stuff for me. So grab your L5, lecture 5 examples, pull them into Excel. There are a bunch of them. I've made them all separate worksheets across one workbook. Now it's important to tag the difference there, because some pieces of software, Excel, only work within one workbook. It is possible to have access from one workbook to another in some programs. So we're looking at L5 this time. You will just see the table. So I'd like you to pull that table into Excel. And then I want to see if we can answer these questions. Now, I will tell you that you can do almost all of this work in your head, because this is a small data set. But if I've got 1,500 records, I'm not going to do it by hand. How do I find total revenue using Excel to do it? I want Excel to do the work for me. I don't want to do it by hand.
We just add,
Okay, how do I do all the adding up all the revenue?
start, drag it forward. Drag it down to highlight revenue and it shows in the bottom. So
What shows where?
by the zoom on the bottom, right? Just some,
There's some totals down here, right? But if I'm going to generate a report to give to somebody else, I don't have to have them go through and do that each time, right? So how can I get in that cell next to where the arrow is? How can I get that number that's down here without typing it in manually? I need one more thing first. Aha, yeah. That's you'll notice even there's this little blue thing that just popped up under there. That says sum, and then in blue it says number one, number two. The parentheses indicates the start of a function. Like in algebra, we wrote f of x. I write sum of, that parenthesis is the of part. And then I can drag through all of this. Oh, you're going to add up those things. Boom. Okay, sum gives me a total. Most units sold. 50. That was easy. It's a small data file. I've got 1,500 records. How do I find the biggest number?
I mean, you could just sorting again.
I could absolutely sort. But if I want to find lots of different numbers in different categories, it might be easier to do it with the whole list and not have to manually sort it each time. So how could I find the largest thing in the units sold? I could even ask, what's the largest thing in revenue? So I don't want to sort twice. How do I get the highest thing? It's another word for largest thing, a mathematical word thingy. Maximum. So if I start typing equals there we are, max, then I just have to tell it maximum of what? Well, I wanted units sold. There we go. If I wanted maximum of revenue, I'd highlight that set of data. I want an average. I was able to find the average down there by the zoom thing when I just highlighted the cells. But if I want to be able to edit the table and edit the data and still have it do the average automatically, I can say, oh, find me an average. If I can spell it properly. Notice there are a lot of other functions that start with the word, start the same way as average. There may be specific cases where we want to use other things rather than just the normal average. We'll talk about these mean and trimmed mean and geometric mean. There are all sorts of other things. We can talk about those in the stats class. I want average of, it says revenue per category. So average revenue. Boom. And that's the same number that came up when we highlighted those cells in the first place. Down here next to the zoom bar, your name. Say that again? Carson showed us. Average revenue per item. Average revenue per item. That's an algebra question. How do I find average revenue per item as opposed to the average of the revenue in category? Ignoring doing it in Excel for the moment. Revenue per item. You know how much revenue I have? You know how many things I sold? What do I do with those numbers? Divide. I have total revenue up there, yes. What I don't have is total item numbers. So I could do this in a couple of different ways. I want total revenue divided by total item. I could say take the sum of the revenues and divide by the sum of all the units sold. Notice it color codes as I'm highlighting. Each field that is the data set for an operation, the argument of that operation, is in a different color depending on, and that way I can go back and I can say, oh, well, yeah, that's the right set of data. That's the right set of data. Since I already had total revenue, I could have avoided the first part where it says sum of the revenues by just referencing that cell. And if our numbers change at any time, that'll automatically update. Carson, that's also why I don't want to do it manually each time, because if I go back and I change something, those formulas still compute the same way. That's our second example in this file. Grab it, throw it in from the Word document, copy it in. Again, this is a small enough data set I can do this in my head. But what command gives me that top answer? Total expenses.
So the way you have you click on the box, auto sum.
Click on the box and click, which is where? Oh, auto sum, boom. Ooh, it's, okay, wait a second. What happened here that's ever so slightly different than what I did manually? Everything above it, right? Which means if I want to do that, say in this line, I'll have other things that aren't my data table above me, right? I need to be careful with the auto sum. And if I want, I can go, oh, wait a minute, that's selecting stuff that's not part of my table. So I can go in and edit that so it only fits the table. Absolutely, that works. Some of these commands get used so often, they get their own shortcuts. Like that. My problem is there isn't a button for everything. So I need to know at least somehow some of the basic commands that I'm going to use a lot. There, total expenses this month. One of the things that AutoSum tends to do more often than not is to recurse everything that goes above. If I'm building a column or a spreadsheet, I could run into some issues there. Most expensive category, least expensive category. I can use the maximum and the minimum. Min works exactly the same as max. There's just one problem. If I type the maximum in here, by the way, you are permitted to put in the cell ranges by hand if you want. If I ask this, what's the answer going to be when I hit enter? Okay. Does that actually answer the question for me? Okay, that's a problem. It tells me how much I spent in the highest category. It doesn't tell me what category that was. Oh, you sneaky mother, how dare you? You told you it did exactly what I wanted it to. It found me the largest number, but it didn't tell me what category that was. Same thing with the minimum, equals MIN B2 to B4. Yeah, the smallest category was $150. This list is small enough, I can then go figure out what that category is. Could I get Excel to tell me what the category is? This is a slightly more complicated procedure. There is a command that looks in a table and goes, find this thing, and then instead of reading out that, read out another column from the same table. The command is a lookup command. There's a vertical lookup and a horizontal lookup. The most general one is XLOOKUP. And notice that the entire pile of things after that parenthesis is what I need to put in. I need to tell it the thing we're going to look up. I'm going to look for this number. Where am I going to look for it? Comma. See the highlighting underneath shifted to the second thing? So now you need to know, where are you going to look? I'm going to look here. Comma. What are you going to give back? I'm going to give back what's in here. Ooh, lookup tables are really, really useful. I don't just need the number, I need to know which line it's on. So, if I take that and I copy it down to the next line, something bad is going to happen. So, XLOOKUP, the cell that had the maximum in it, in this case, that's B7. And then the range with the numbers, comma, the range with the categories. If I just copy and paste, something changes. What changes? By the way, we get the right answer if we copy and paste. But I didn't do it right. Take a look at the text of the command. Up here where it says XLOOKUP, after you've done the copy and paste, go click in that row and tell me what changed. What changed? If it helps, go back to the rent one, click in that. What's different? Carson? Well, but that's what it did because it knows to look for whatever the big is. But look at the other pieces. The 1200 is what's highlighted in the upper row. And if I go down here to the utilities one, than the 150 because that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for 150. Look at the other pieces. Uh-oh. What happened? It didn't highlight rent. Why?
It just shifts it down one.
I moved down one. It moved every row number down one. Look at the actual row numbers up there. It now says in that second range, instead of B2 to B4, it says B3 to B5. And the same thing with the A's. Instead of A2 to A4, it says A3 to A5. The computer is stupid. You move down one row. Don't you want everything to move down one row? How do I tell the computer, no, leave those numbers alone? I want them to be absolute, not relative to where I am. There is a way to do that. It's a dollar sign. So I'm going to go back up to the rent line. And in the command, instead of typing B2 to B4, I'm going to type $2 and $4. And the same thing with the A column. All I've done is insert a dollar sign before the 2 and the 4 in both cases. Notice that doesn't change anything here. This command stays exactly the same. It's highlighting the same bits. It gives me the same answer. It does exactly what I want. I did not change the first one. The first number, B7, does not have a dollar sign on it. But now when I copy and paste, it didn't move the table numbers. It left them absolutely unchanged. You put a dollar sign in front of the columns or the rows if you want to make an absolute rather than a relative statement. I think that's really important because I want to make sure I'm using the same table for everything. I'm going to make it an absolute table. You could even give a table a name and then just use that. That's a little more beyond what I want to do. So there's a way to look up within a multi-row table. One of the things I did for grades last semester, in a couple of classes, I said, show me who's got the largest number of absences. Not what the largest number of absences are, but who has it. And then show me their grade. So I could do a correlative analysis and say, hey, does coming to class affect your grade? I want to look at that. We'll figure out ways to do that. But that's something I want to know. If you come to class and your grade is higher and you don't come to class, your grade is lower, I need to know that. Or maybe I'm fucking with everybody's grades and they stay home and they learn much more than if they come see me. Doesn't always work. How do I do that last one? Average spending per category. That's the same average we did last time. It's exactly equals average of the B2 to B4 numbers. Again, that's the same thing we got if we just highlighted them. It showed up down at the bottom there. Is that number of any use to me? Here's a next type of question. I can calculate something. Is the something I've calculated valuable, useful? That's a very different type of question. In this case, I would say, knowing that average spending per category doesn't tell me squat, so few categories, they're so far apart. $150 to $1,200, the middle somewhere doesn't help me. I'm going to jump a bit. Sales trend analysis. Is that the one I wanted? No, I wanted the inventory management. Number 4, top of the second page, inventory management. What is the product with the largest stock? This is the same kind of question we just answered about the category with the highest or smallest. So this is really a 2-step process. Exactly. I'm going to find the maximum of our stock. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, let's do an X lookup of the stock number in the second column and return whatever's in the first column. Exactly. If I knew what the maximum was beforehand, I wouldn't have to reference it somehow. The larger my data set, the less likely I'm going to be able to just scan through and tell you what the biggest value is. I like doing that as a 2-step setup. I don't know if you can insert one function into another. Let's try something. Instead of actually doing the maximum separately, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to write X lookup. And then I'm going to say, the thing I want you to look up is the maximum of this data. And then I want you to use this data to find the biggest. And then I want you to return whatever's in the first column. I don't know if this is going to work. Does it? Yes. I found a shortcut. I can do it in 1 step. If I say, hey, the thing I want you to look up is the maximum or the minimum or whatever it is. I didn't know if that was going to work. What's this one?
Do some stuff. Times third column.
I think that might be a problem. Because widgets are $2.50 a piece, right? So the value of just the widgets is not going to be what I get if I put that set of numbers together, because that's going to take all the products. How much is the total of the products? 500, 300, that's 900 products, right? And then if I add all the dollars, 254 and 10, that's 1650. That's assuming each of my 900 products has a value of 1650 if I just multiply those together. I like the idea of multiplying, but I don't think I should do them as totals. I think I should multiply and multiply and multiply and then add up, right? So I'm going to do that. I could do it again in several steps. I could make another column. And I could make value of product, right? I could go up here to column D, and I could multiply 500 times 250, and 300 times 4, and 100 times 10, right? I could do that. And then I could add up those. But again, Excel knows this is a common maneuver. So there is a single command. Down here, I'm going to write equals sum product. Now, if you run into a formula and you're not sure what it does, you can click on this little blue thing right here. And it'll bring up the Excel help. That is a lifesaver. Because you can search for things and do that in the help file. So I'm going to go sum product, and then it lists array 1, array 2, array 3. It wants the lists of things I'm going to multiply by. They need to be the same length. I'm going to multiply these numbers by these numbers. So that's 500 at 250, 300 at 4, and 100 at 10 totaled up, rather than 900 at 1650. That's a really powerful command. Questions? One of the more common things to do in Excel is standard bookkeeping. So adding, subtracting, multiplying by interest accomplishments, all of that shows up in Excel frequently. How would I calculate remaining balance after I spend stuff? So I'm going to take income minus expenses. I'm done. Running totals, debits and credits through an accounting sheet. Exactly this way. You keep a running total down the side. I did a personal finance course last semester in which I did a mortgage. I took out a loan for $125,000 at 6% to buy a house. I didn't, but that was the example we used. 30-year mortgage. How much am I paying a month? We ran the numbers, figured I was going to pay just about $1,000 a month. And so we said, let's set up a table. How much do I owe? How much interest did they charge me this month? Now I pay $1,000. They take the interest out and apply the rest to my balance. That's called an amortization schedule. And it's how you pay off an interest-bearing loan, whether it's a house or a car or student loans. That's how you amortize your debt, how you lay it to rest, mort, to kill it. Amortize your debt like that. This is the absolute easiest way to do that and to generate that spreadsheet, which by law, the loan company is required to give you when you buy a loan. It's usually buried in 7,000 other pages of mortgage material that you sign when you close on a house, or it's about 18 pages into a car purchase document. I don't know. What are you buying next? But I built mine in here. Okay. Tuesday, provided the weather doesn't kill us. Tuesday, I want to go through the very last bit of really working this as a project. And we'll start those two labeled assignments, assignment 1-1 and 1-2, on Tuesday here in class. I will see you all then. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.